Max from Max Locks here to try to talk you through one of the more interesting rumors floating around the F1 paddock ahead of the Portuguese Grand Prix set to start here in just a little bit. First saw this from Ed Straw from the-race.com talking about the possibility of Sergio Perez, of all people, getting a seat at Williams and ousting George Russell. We'll break down 3 questions that'll try to explain this situation that kind of popped up out of nowhere. The first and most logical question here is, why would Williams do this? Well, the Williams family had to sell the team. Claire and Frank Williams no longer a part of the day-to-day operation. I know it's one of the more sad things to come out of the F1 season this year, but Doralton Capital stepped up. They made an investment in this Williams team. George Russell essentially on loan from the Mercedes team, so really the guys running Williams now, they want somebody that's going to be a more long-term driver. This Williams team made some pretty big strides on track, at least getting Russell into Q2 with regularity. Still hasn't resulted in a single point for the Williams team this year. They got the one lone point last year at that wet race in Germany from Robert Kubica, but a veteran like Sergio Perez could really help the Williams team develop this car for the future and get it back towards the front of the grid like it once was. Now, the second question is, why does this make sense for Sergio Perez? Well, he needs a seat. He was on contract for the new Aston Martin project set to start next year, but he was usurped by Sebastian Vettel. Everybody is pretty well versed in that situation if you're watching this video. Perez is a great driver. He's been top 10 in the points every year since 2014 when he started at Force India / now Racing Point. P5 in the standings this year despite missing a race after he contracted COVID-19. Some openings on the grid right now. Most spots are confirmed. We know that because Perez was confirmed for next year and unfortunately finds himself out of a seat right now. A move to Red Bull is unlikely. While it would be really, really fun because I think Perez is a good driver, had previously, complained that the difference between himself and Lewis Hamilton's only about 2 or 3 tenths a lap. I'd love to see Perez kind of back up his words in one of those top seats, but it doesn't seem likely that Red Bull is going to make that move. Alfa Romeo and Haas have openings as well for Perez, but, I don't know if he wants a car that's moving backward the way the Alfa and the Haas and all the Ferrari-powered cars, for that matter, have moved back this year. Perez makes a lot of sense for Williams. He's a veteran driver. He also brings a lot of money. He's a Mexican driver that brings a lot of Mexican endorsements. 3 telecommunications companies, that's Claro, Telcel, and Telmex, all back Perez and would bring a lot of money towards the Williams team that's hurting financially. Really, all of F1 is hurting financially after the year that they have had this year. So Perez is a great driver and he brings money with him. It makes a lot of sense for Williams. The most murky part of this situation is what this means for George Russell. Of course, the 2018 Formula 2 champion came into F1 with a ton of acclaim. Mercedes-backed driver. Again, that's the key here. And that's why Williams doesn't want to keep him around long term. I've been relatively unimpressed with George Russell. Not to say that he's a bad driver by any means, but just with the clunker car that the Williams has been for the last couple of years, he hasn't even really gotten a chance to prove himself. He's made some mistakes when he has gotten some chances in wheel-to-wheel combat. Still a really good prospect for the future, but I haven't really been wowed by him just yet because he really hasn't had an opportunity. So Mercedes obviously would be something that has to be asked. Valtteri Bottas has been confirmed for next year, but we don't really know what that means. I don't think Toto Wolff, who has been advising Russell, is going to make the move to bump out Bottas at this point. I think a really logical role for Russell, if he is bumped out by Perez in this scenario, would be to be the Mercedes reserve driver for the 2021 season and then possibly slide in for Bottas in 2022 for the new regulations change. I think that would make the most sense. Slotting in Russell at Red Bull, not going to happen. Alfa Romeo and Haas doesn't really make sense. Wolff has been an advisor for a young driver before, Esteban Ocon. Remember, he was ousted by Racing Point Force India and needed to sit out a year, and he sat back as the Mercedes reserve driver, ultimately landed a nice spot at Renault, and Wolff advised him and had him sit out for the year, and I think it was really good for Esteban Ocon. I think he really matured. This speeds up the clock, though, for the potential Russell move to Mercedes in 2022. They really need to decide if Russell is the guy that they want to be Lewis Hamilton or whoever's teammate for the future. Right now, Russell is the best bet for Mercedes long-term, but doesn't necessarily make sense for Williams in the short term. Only other question I have is, how is this going to affect future relationships between Williams and Mercedes? Mercedes. Williams has been a development program for Mercedes. We saw, of course, Valtteri Bottas work his way up from the Williams team into eventually getting the spot at Mercedes, and things have worked out relatively well there for Valtteri Bottas. Never passed Lewis Hamilton, but really who has in this era? So I'm interested to see if the new bosses at Williams decide to go in a different direction. All that to be said, I think Perez taking a spot at Williams is going to be a long shot, but I think it's the best bet for Perez in the short term, probably the best bet for Williams in the longer term, and it really puts Russell in a sticky situation. Thanks for watching.